The Dark Pictures Man of Medan is the first installation of the Dark Pictures Anthology series. It's an interactive horror adventure game developed by Supermassive Games and published by Bandai Namco Entertainment on August 30th, 2019. It's gotten some mixed responses, so let's break down what to expect from this title. First, let's talk about the elephant in the room, or the anti-hype surrounding Man of Medan. That is, comparing it to Until Dawn. Look, I get it. Supermassive Games' previous title was Until Dawn, released in 2015, and it's similar in the fact that it's a decision-based horror narrative game with branching paths. Sounds like the same thing, which it is basically, but there's some differences too. Really, the scope is totally different. Until Dawn was released under Sony Interactive Entertainment as a PS4 exclusive and at a full $60 price point. Even then, it was only about 8 hours long, and people praised it. In comparison, Man of Medan is released under Bandai Namco across multiple platforms at a $30 price point and running about 4 hours. So it seems there's really a dollar in game size correlation, for the most part. Lastly, I'll even note that Until Dawn is not Supermassive Games' last release. People are ignoring their detective action-adventure game, Hidden Agenda. That game released in 2017 to much acclaim, though most people I think want to forget the entire Sony PlayLink feature with wonky mobile phone controls, so they just kind of ignore this title. But again, for comparison, Hidden Agenda was a mere 2 hours long for $20. But enough about the games that people want to compare Man of Medan to. Let's talk about Man of Medan, because it stands on its own, and I think it's a really fun game that's worth getting, but it's also far from perfect and riddled with problems. So what is Man of Medan? Man of Medan is the first entry in the Dark Pictures Anthology, which is a series of horror games being released. It's a decision-based horror game where you control 5 characters in an attempt to survive their treasure hunt that leads them to a derelict ship from World War II. I've already covered that the game is fairly short, clocking in at about 4 hours, but the length is only part of it. The variety of play modes and decisions are intended for repeated playthroughs, and each one can be totally different. You can literally save every person in the game, or have every person die on you, in a variety of different ways, so you can play this as much as you like and still feel pretty fresh. Speaking of ways to play, there are 3 ways. One is solo, if you prefer to go it alone, but you can also play co-op, either local couch co-op or online. All 3 are good experiences, but I have to say that in trying all 3 ways, online co-op is by far the best experience. I think the fact that you can play co-op is a defining factor in this game, and lends to it being a better experience. And doing so online is the most dramatic change and the best thing about Man of Medan. I can't say much without spoiling anything, but let's just say that the interactions you have with the game, and your friend does as well, it's more dynamic and enjoyable than with local co-op. The biggest thing about how the game plays though, is that no matter if you are alone or not, you have a strong feeling of always being alone. It's really a creepy feeling, and it makes you feel just a little helpless. That structure of the game and how they made it and the ambiance of everything, it's spot on. They nail the spooky ghost ship venue perfectly, and it really brings back the vibe of a lot of old horror movies. You know, for the older folks out there. The lead up to it introduces the characters you play as and what brings them to the ship that is out in the middle of nowhere in the South Pacific. Mechanically speaking, the game's okay. It isn't great, but it isn't game-breaking for the most part. If everything was perfect, I would say that the mechanics of controlling the characters and interacting with the world is, well, slow and sluggish. It lacks any refinement or detailed control, and it makes me struggle and feel like I've never played a game before. And I think that plays into some of my critiques when you get into real trouble later. Overall, it's passable though, and functions well enough to get you through the game. But again, that's if everything was perfect. Man of Medan is fairly glitchy, and I'm running it on a PS4 Pro for the record. Glitches span from small texture loading delays and choppy animations all the way to game-breaking freezing. The game just feels choppy and clunky overall, but the fact that in a single playthrough we had 2 game freezes that forced a restart shows that the bugs run deep. The graphics of the game are, well, very meh in my mind. They don't look bad, they just don't look good to me either. Something about the lighting always seems off, like they made the environments in a painting and my characters are walking on top of it rather than through it. And the characters are inconsistent. They might look really good in this scene, but in the next they're very bland. Or the details and textures are good, but the emotions and expressions don't really show through the animations well. The hot word these days is photogrammetry, and all the cool kids talk about how filming real actors translates to realistic graphics. Overall, that's true, but that just isn't the case with Man of Medan. Sometimes it looks stellar, but sometimes it looks like a bad Photoshop job. Why can't all the characters show emotion through their faces? Why does their hair look plastered on top of their heads sometimes? Why do they walk in very non-organic motions? Does Fliss ever close her flippin' mouth? It's always open through the whole game. I don't think it's fully detracting from the game, so to speak, but the more I think about it, the more I can see the glaring issues. But speaking of the characters, the way they look isn't what defines them. The way they act does. I'm not exactly sure how I feel about the characters in this game. You can make of that what you will. Their personalities are strong enough to define them, but not overpowering to where you feel it overcomes your choices. The relationships between all of them are good, be it boyfriend-girlfriend or brothers. There's a defined deeper connection with most of them right when you start. The implied relationship dynamics are good ideas, but I feel that the impact is lost because you're just thrown into the story and only start learning the dynamics after you already start making choices. Like, is Brad really envious of Alex? Or jealous? Does Julia really love Alex? Should she marry him? Do I even care? Of course, there's a screen you can jump to and view aspects currently dominating your character, and also a relationship bar with each of the other characters. But I find that very loose in presentation. Like, I'm not exactly sure how to read the relationship bars with any meaningful precision. And the words defining my characters? Do those actually have an impact on whether I'm successful in my choices? Or are those just a result of my choices? Plus, stopping to look at that screen, it's very detracting from the game. On my first playthrough, I didn't look at it at all, and I felt I had a better time than trying to control a character's stats by decisions. However, the decision making is good. They do it quick, they don't let you think too much, and no matter what you choose, they always make you second guess if you chose wisely. But it's not perfect, because there are times when you just don't want any of the choices. Or maybe the actual outcome plays out just a little differently than the text prompt. Yeah, I meant to choose that, but the character came off a little snarky or snobbish in doing so. It's not quite misleading, but the answer just didn't seem to go with the option when I chose it, and I don't feel that I played the characters too dramatically in one direction or another to warrant such a response. Beyond the decision making are the decision paths and QuickTime events. When things really start moving, you'll need to decide a direction for your character and/or run through a QuickTime event to execute it. They come fast, and that keeps you on your toes. Tensions run high with them, and my palms definitely started sweating at times. These aspects are probably the second greatest feature in the game. However, the QTEs might have no consequences or huge consequences. Try to open a door and fail the QTE, and somebody just opens it for you. Or you miss a QTE, and a character dies. Instantly. No going back. So it can be with a heavy heart when you miss a button or your timing. Speaking of which, that can be a negative in the game depending on how you feel. Man of Medan is unforgiving. Make a bad choice or miss a QTE, and you can have a character die. After 3 hours of building relationships and crafting your personality traits, that can all go down the drain in an instant. I'm not sure how you feel about that, but that sort of turns me off. But again, the game is designed for multiple playthroughs, and there actually is a way to load portions of the game once you're done to attempt a different result. So I won't hold that against them too badly, but it just isn't my cup of tea. In a similar vein, the story itself can have a poor payoff too. It might be decent and play out well, or it might not depending on how you play, what you find, and what you decide. I don't think it ends strongly. In fact, I'm a bit disappointed in the ending. But even still, I think the ride was fun, and it's worth a couple plays with a friend. But I don't want to spoil anything, so I'll just stop there. Additionally, the Curator sort of bugs me in the story reveal as well. He's a really cool concept and character, channeling his inner David Bowie and throwing a little Robert Patrick Terminator in looks. The Curator walks you through the concept of the game and the story, backhandedly insulting you for your decisions along the way. I like it. It's a really nice touch. But is it enough? He seems to be tying everything together, as far as the Dark Pictures series is concerned. So, he'll be present in the next game, Little Hope, as well, and probably all of them. However, he doesn't seem to impact anything. It doesn't appear that the games of the Dark Pictures Anthology will be a universe, meaning that they're interconnected at some point. But instead, they're all just standalone titles, which is fine. But that belittles the Curator down to just being a host to introduce the game. You know, similar to the Crypt Keeper or Elvira introducing shows. That leaves me feeling a little bit, well, empty. I'd much rather him be important and integral to the game. The Curator is clearly seen multiple times in the game watching. And while I admit I was startled a few times for seeing him, and then it adds a little creep factor in, knowing that he's not really important and just a host, it kind of takes that feeling completely away. So it looks like they went for a mysterious watcher character, but in my mind it just isn't quite there. I got more goosebumps from the G-Man in Half-Life, and talk about a character that has absolutely no answers about him and is shrouded in mystery. But yeah, the Curator, he's cool, but he's no G-Man. So I'll break here to summarize. Man of Medan pulls off being a really fun co-op horror ride. Despite numerous shortcomings, it's enjoyable and I recommend it. Remember that games are more than the sum of their parts, so even with flawed parts, Man of Medan is really entertaining. I'm hoping some of the technical stuff gets patched, but some of the drawbacks are design in nature, so they just are what they are. I can rip the game apart to no end, but we need to remember, it's not a AAA title and only a $30 game at launch. I'm not sorry I paid that price, and I feel I've definitely gotten my money's worth. If you wait for a sale or a price drop, then its worth is even more. I do have a final comment to make regarding the end, but I've tried to keep everything spoiler free for my review, so I'll give you a little time to back out now if you don't want to hear any spoilers. Thanks for watching, and throw a like on the video. So really, now's your last chance. Are you choosing to hear spoilers? Okay, here we go. I do think the story's okay, and the setup with the characters is decent. It's not phenomenal on either front, but it's definitely good enough. They add a lot of tension as you go, starting from the World War II intro flashback through getting to the Orang Medan under duress from Olsen and his gang. But having the Manchurian Gold end up being a bioweapon experiment, it removes all spook factor in the story. Just make a decision to have a horror game. You don't need science to back it up. We can suspend our disbelief long enough to believe in ghosts or curses or anything. Why do you have to try to have an answer for it? So basically, all that backstory is for nothing. Jones finding the ancient artifact, some Chinese child emperor, some gold statue. You keep reading notes along the way. Note after note, clue after clue, and most of them are pretty empty because the character that authored them didn't know the whole story either. So you do all of that only to find out that none of it is right or matters? There's no payoff of this great mystery unfolding about strange events. It's sort of deflating at the end. The ride was definitely good, but the ending just wasn't. The Curator said, "We all make our decisions by our own moral compass, and live by them or die by them." Well, hopefully Supermassive Games will make the decision to really make Little Hope true horror next year. So I'll officially end it there. If you watched this far, you've also played the game, or rebelliously just didn't care about spoilers. You anarchist. So throw a comment on the video, let me know your thoughts. Did you have as much fun as I did? Because I really enjoyed it. Or did you think something else ruined the game that I didn't mention? Let me know. Thanks again, and I'll see you guys in the next game.
This game just did it to me twice. F you, game.